So the first part of this extra material was actually a suggestion from Kit. With so many different battle chips in the entire game, it can be a little tricky sometimes to keep straight what they can all do. Heck, some of the battle chips I'd never even tried using before now. So that's what this is, a showcase of all the standard class chips in the game, showing what they can all do, their strengths, weaknesses, and some strategies with them. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So the first group of chips we'll be looking at is really kind of the most basic, the cannon family. There are 3 levels to this chip. Cannon, which does 40 damage. High Cannon, which does 80 damage. And M Cannon, which does a respectable 120 damage. It's simple but effective, a single panel hit against whatever's in front of you. The next group of chips gives you special spreading shots from your arm cannon. For lack of a better term, I'll call this the gun family. First up is Shotgun, which does 30 damage to your target, and the panel immediately behind it. Next up we have Crossgun. This one hits the target and all 4 diagonal panels from the target for 30 damage each. And then there's Spreader, which hits the target panel and all surrounding panels for 30 damage each. It's not too powerful, but it is a nice spread. There are 2 more chips that work pretty much the same as the Spreader, except they have some different properties to them. These are the element spreads. The first of these variants is Bubbler. It does 50 damage compared to the 30 damage of Spreader. It has the same area of effect, but this time it's Aqua Element, making it well suited to use against Heat Element enemies. And then there's Heater, which is stronger still, doing 70 damage. It has the same area of effect, but this time it's Heat Element, making it well suited to using against Wood Element enemies. The next group is a little unwieldy to use, but still offers some rather nice power and attributes. It's the Bomb family. The first of the bombs is the Mini Bomb. Like all the bombs, you throw this one and it lands 2 panels ahead of where you were when you threw it. It does 50 damage but has no area of effect, so you have to be accurate with it. Next up is the Little Bomb. Like Mini Bomb, it does 50 damage, but there is an important difference. It does the damage not just to wherever the bomb lands, but also directly up and down from the landing site. Next up is Cross Bomb. Unlike Cross Gun, this truly is a straight cross rather than an X pattern. It makes a cross explosion from where it lands, doing 70 damage to whatever it hits. The final conventional bomb chip is the Big Bomb chip. This one does 90 damage to the panel it hits and all surrounding panels, so aim for the center in order to hit everything. The next group is fairly extensive. It's time to talk about swords. The first 3 swords are the most basic and straightforward. First off is just the normal sword, which does 80 damage, but only to the panel directly in front of you. Wide sword, which hits the panel in front of you, plus up and down from it. Best to use it in the center row so you hit the entire column. And long sword, which does 80 damage to the panel right in front of you, plus the one just beyond. Now we start getting to some fun ones, such as Fighter Sword, which has a range of 3 panels directly in front of you, and does 100 damage to anything it hits. Next in line is Night Sword. It has the same range, but does 150 damage. And then there's Hero Sword. It has the same range, 3 panels, but does an impressive 200 damage to anything it hits. Very nice. Next up are the 3 elemental swords. There's Fire Sword, which does 100 heat damage. Aqua Sword, the strongest of the three, which does 150 aqua damage, and Elect Sword, which does 120 elect damage. All three have the same range as Wide Sword. So I've let this battle drag on a good bit, and as you might notice, I've lost a lot of health. 600 points to be exact. That's because it's time to demonstrate Muramasa, which does as much damage as the health you've lost. Goodbye, Gutsman. The thing is, since you have to injure yourself a lot to effectively use it, you're never going to get a good busting rank with this. And also, it only has the range of a normal sword, one panel. But that being said, it's a pretty good last resort chip if you can get in close. Next up, we have a rather common chip family that provides one of the most useful early on attacks in the game. It's time to discuss the Shockwave family. So first up is Shockwave. It only does 60 damage, but like all the Shockwave chips, the nice thing is, so long as it has ground to travel over, it'll keep going, so you can hit multiple targets. There's also Sonic Wave, which does 80 damage and is a bit faster. And finally Dino Wave, which does 100 damage and is faster still. If you time it right, you can sometimes hit some enemies more than once with it, which is rather useful. The next family of chips offers both elemental power and strategic uses. It's time for the Tower family. So first up is Fire Tower. We remember this as one of my old standbys. The fire lasts a while, so it's great for setting traps. Not only that, but you can move up and down to kind of lure the fire around. Very versatile and does 100 heat damage. Next up is Aqua Tower. It does 120 aqua damage, so it does more damage than Fire Tower, but it comes at a slight sacrifice. The Aqua Tower doesn't quite last as long as Fire Tower, so it's not as easy to set up traps with it. So it gains power but sacrifices a little versatility. And last is Wood Tower, which does 140 wood damage. So it has a lot of power, but it stays on screen even less than the Aqua Towers, so it really sacrifices versatility and is purely about power. So, looking for a way to severely damage your enemies and limit where they can move? Might I suggest the Quake family? So first up is Quake 1. This has the same arcing path as a bomb-type chip, and when it lands it does 90 damage and cracks the panel. Quake 2 does 120 damage and also cracks the panel that it lands on, but it has an added bonus. It releases a burst from the impact site, damaging the panels above and below, so use it in the middle row for the most effect. And then there's Quake 3, which does 150 damage, plus releases a cross-shaped burst from wherever it lands. Sometimes in the heat of battle you just want to get close and smack the enemy right in the face. For that, there's the Punch family. There are two types of punch chips. There's Guts Punch, which does 60 damage, and Ice Punch, which does 80 aqua damage. They're very close-range chips, but they do have special characteristics to them. One thing to keep in mind about punch-type chips like Guts Punch is they can be used to move things like rock cubes. However, keep in mind it does transfer damage to the cube, leaving it fairly fragile. To further demonstrate the effectiveness of a punch moving a block, we'll use Ice Punch on these ice blocks. You don't really have to use the matching punch, but it's stylish. Note that since ice blocks are slippery, they will move all the way across the screen. And should you hit something with a punched block, it will actually take damage. Next, we have two chips that really don't belong with any others. In the numerical order of the library, they're just kind of there. So it's time to discuss Dash and Howitzer. Is it just me, or does it really sound like that would be another name for that character from Space Mutiny? Face Bone Crunch, Gristle McThornbody, Big McLarge Huge, Dash Howitzer! Next up is Dash, which makes you rocket invincibly across the screen, doing 50 damage to anything you happen to hit. Since you're invincible during the dash, you can also use it strategically in order to dodge attacks. And then there's Howitzer. This one's fairly straightforward. It's just a big cannonball that has the same arc as a bomb-type chip. It does 150 damage if it hits an enemy, but if it hits an empty panel it destroys it, leaving a hole.